I watch my sister Mei-yoon walk across the stage in the dress I had picked out for myself, accepting the National Merit Scholarship with my forged application materials, and I realize that everything I have worked for my entire 18 years of life has been stolen from me by the person I trusted most in this world. The auditorium erupts in applause as she clutches the certificate that bears her name but contains my achievements, my volunteer hours, my perfect SAT scores, my essay about overcoming adversity that she could never have written because she has never faced a day of real challenge in her privileged life. Mei Yoon-jung has demonstrated exceptional academic excellence and community leadership, the scholarship committee chairman announces, reading from the application I spent 3 years perfecting, and I feel something cold and final settle in my chest as I watch my parents beam with pride in the front row, their cameras flashing as they capture this moment of triumph that belongs to me but will forever be remembered as hers. The irony cuts deep because I am sitting in the back of the auditorium, having been told by my mother that there weren't enough tickets for the whole family, when the truth is that my presence would complicate the narrative they have constructed where Mei-yoon is the naturally gifted daughter and I am simply the one who tries hard but falls short. The scholarship represents everything I have dreamed of since I was 14 years old and first visited Columbia University during a school trip. Walking through those ivy-covered halls and imagining myself studying international relations and maybe, eventually, law school, building a career that would let me make a difference in the world rather than simply existing in the shadow of my sister's effortless perfection. But effortless is the wrong word, because what I am witnessing today required tremendous effort, not from Mei-yoon, but from my parents who orchestrated this theft with the precision of seasoned criminals, substituting my application materials with hers, using their connections in the education department to ensure the switch went unnoticed, and convincing me that my original application had been lost in the mail so I wouldn't question why I never received confirmation. I discovered the truth yesterday when I found my original application in the trash behind our house, every page carefully torn so that my name was unreadable, but my essay and achievements were intact, and I realized that my mother had been rifling through my belongings for months, photographing my work, copying my volunteer coordinator's contact information, even replicating my handwriting for the personal statement sections. The betrayal goes deeper than simple sibling rivalry. It represents a systematic dismantling of my identity, a calculated decision by my own family that my dreams are less important than maintaining Mei-yoon's image as the golden child who can do no wrong. As she descends the stage with her stolen triumph, I catch sight of David Chen in the middle section, his dark eyes fixed on me with an expression of confused concern, because he knows better than anyone how many hours I spent in the library preparing this application, how many nights I stayed up perfecting that essay, how many weekends I sacrificed social activities to volunteer at the community center and build the community service record that now appears on my sister's resume. David has been my best friend since we were children, the quiet boy next door who always believed in my potential even when my own family questioned it, and I can see in his face that he understands something is wrong with this picture, though he doesn't yet know the full extent of the deception. The ceremony continues with speeches about merit and hard work, about how this scholarship will change the recipient's life and open doors to opportunities that would otherwise remain closed, and every word feels like a knife twisting in the wound that my family has inflicted upon me. The committee chairman mentions Mei-yoon's exceptional essay about working with underprivileged children, which makes me want to laugh bitterly because my sister has never voluntarily spent time with anyone who couldn't advance her social status. While I have been tutoring immigrant children at the community center since I was 15, learning their stories, understanding their struggles, pouring their experiences into the essay that now bears her name. When the ceremony finally ends and families surge forward to congratulate their graduating seniors, I slip out through the side exit and find myself in the school parking lot, standing beside David's car as he hurries to catch up with me, his graduation gown billowing in the evening breeze. "Mei-lin, wait!" he calls, and when I turn to face him, I see my own devastation reflected in his eyes, because David knows me well enough to recognize that this moment should have been mine, and his presence is the only thing preventing me from completely falling apart. "I don't understand what happened," he says quietly, his voice careful and gentle in the way it always becomes when he senses I'm struggling. "Your grades were higher, your test scores were perfect. Your volunteer work," he trails off, shaking his head, and I realize that he suspects the truth but doesn't want to voice it because the implications are too horrible to speak aloud. How do you tell your best friend that her own family has sabotaged her future? How do you explain that the people who are supposed to love and support her have instead chosen to sacrifice her dreams on the altar of their favorite child's success? It doesn't matter now. I manage to say, though my voice sounds hollow and defeated even to my own ears. What's done is done, but even as I speak these words, I know they're not true. Because this betrayal will matter for the rest of my life, shaping every opportunity I don't receive, every door that remains closed, every dream I have to abandon, because my family decided that Mei Yun's success was worth more than my happiness. Without the scholarship, I watch my carefully planned future crumble like a house of cards in a hurricane. And by September, I find myself enrolled at the local community college, while Mei Yun posts Instagram photos from her Columbia University dorm room, surrounded by designer furniture and new friends who don't know that her entire academic identity is built on stolen achievements. The community college is fine, really, with dedicated professors and hardworking students, but it wasn't supposed to be my path, and every day I walk through those utilitarian hallways, I remember the ivy-covered buildings where I should have been studying international relations and preparing for law school. My parents refused to contribute even a single dollar toward my education, claiming that all available family funds must go toward Mei Yun's expenses at Columbia, which apparently include not only tuition and room and board, but also sorority dues, designer clothes, spring break trips, and a monthly allowance that exceeds what most families spend on groceries. Mei Yun is representing our family at a prestigious institution, my mother explains when I ask why my sister needs $3,000 for rush week alone. Her success reflects on all of us, and we can't have her looking shabby compared to her classmates. The implication is clear. My success at community college doesn't reflect on anyone because it's not really success at all. I work 3 jobs to pay for my classes and living expenses, waitressing at a family restaurant on weekends, tutoring high school students in the evenings, and working at the campus bookstore between my own classes. And the exhaustion begins to take its toll on my grades as I struggle to maintain the academic excellence that once came so naturally when my only responsibility was being a student. My professors notice the change, particularly Dr. Martinez, who teaches my constitutional law class and who pulls me aside after I fall asleep during a lecture on due process rights. "Jang, I've reviewed your high school transcripts, and this level of performance doesn't reflect your capabilities," she says with genuine concern. "Is everything all right at home?" But how can I explain that everything is catastrophically wrong at home? That my own family has essentially disowned me for the crime of being born second? That I spend my nights calculating whether I can afford both textbooks and groceries this week, while my sister posts photos of expensive dinners at trendy Manhattan restaurants? Dr. Martinez offers to help me apply for additional financial aid, but the forms require parental financial information, and my parents refuse to provide it, claiming that since I'm an adult, I should handle my own responsibilities. The catch-22 is perfectly designed. I'm too old to qualify for independent aid, but too abandoned by my family to access dependent aid. Meanwhile, Mei Yun parties her way through freshman year at Columbia with the carefree attitude of someone who has never faced real consequences for her actions, and her social media feed becomes a daily reminder of the life that was stolen from me. She pledges the most exclusive sorority on campus, dates a series of wealthy boys from prominent families, and maintains a GPA that hovers around 2.8, while posting photos captioned with inspirational quotes about working hard and following your dreams. The irony would be amusing if it weren't so devastatingly personal, watching her waste the opportunities I would have treasured while I struggled to afford a single textbook for my political science class. The family dynamics shift in ways that make every holiday and family gathering an exercise in psychological torture, with my parents treating me like a disappointing distant relative rather than their eldest daughter, while they lavish attention and praise on Mei Yun for achievements that grow more modest by the semester. When she manages to pass Introduction to Economics with a C-, my mother throws a celebration dinner. When I make the dean's list at community college while working 30 hours a week, the accomplishment passes without comment. My extended family, fed a steady diet of propaganda about Mei Yun's brilliance and my limitations, begins to treat me with the kind of pitying condescension reserved for family members who just can't seem to get their lives together. The isolation becomes nearly unbearable when my former high school friends drift away, not out of malice but out of the natural tendency for people to move in different social circles based on their circumstances, and suddenly I find myself surrounded by people who assume that community college was always my plan, that I never had the grades or ambition for anything more prestigious. David tries to maintain our friendship despite the growing gap between our daily realities. He's thriving at the state university on an engineering scholarship, building robots and dating a sweet girl from his physics class, but I can see the pity in his eyes when he visits me at the restaurant where I work. And eventually, I start making excuses to avoid seeing him because the contrast between his rising trajectory and my stagnant situation is too painful to bear. The breaking point comes during my second year, when my grandmother, the only family member who had consistently supported my academic dreams and who had promised to help with my education costs, suffers a massive stroke while visiting our house, and overhearing my parents discuss their plans to spend my college fund on a luxury car for Mayun's graduation present. Grandmother had always been the family matriarch, the one person whose disapproval could make my parents reconsider their actions, and her death removes the last buffer between me and their complete indifference to my well-being. At her funeral, Mayun arrives late wearing an inappropriate party dress, having flown back from a sorority formal, and delivers a eulogy about how grandmother always believed in following your dreams, apparently unaware of the bitter irony in her words. By my junior year at community college, I'm forced to drop out entirely when my parents announce that they're cutting off the small amount of support they had been providing, utilities for the basement apartment where I live in their house, health insurance, the family cell phone plan, because they need to redirect those funds toward Mei Yun's study abroad program in London, which costs more than most people's annual salaries. It's an incredible opportunity for cultural enrichment, my mother explains, as if the decision to financially abandon one daughter in favor of the other is simply a matter of practical resource allocation. Mei Yun will be representing our family internationally. I pack my few belongings and move into a studio apartment above a convenience store, working full-time at the restaurant while taking online courses when I can afford them, and slowly watching my dreams of law school and meaningful career dissolve into the harsh reality of survival economics. My former high school classmates graduate from their universities and begin careers in their chosen fields, posting photos from job interviews and graduate school acceptance celebrations, while I calculate whether I can afford to fix my car's transmission or whether I'll need to walk to work for the next few months. The girl who was once valedictorian, who scored in the 99th percentile on standardized tests, who had professors recommending her for advanced placement courses, is now living paycheck to paycheck and wondering if she'll ever have the chance to use her mind for anything more challenging than memorizing restaurant specials. The truth about my family's systematic destruction of my future reveals itself through an overheard phone conversation between my mother and my aunt, and the casual cruelty of their discussion shatters any remaining illusions I had about the possibility that their favoritism toward Mei Yun was anything other than a deliberate, calculated campaign to ensure that I would never overshadow their preferred daughter. I'm delivering groceries to my parents' house, a humiliating arrangement where they occasionally hire me to do household tasks for minimum wage, as if I'm a stranger rather than their child, when I hear my mother's voice drifting from the kitchen as she chats with Aunt Helen about family matters. Of course, we always knew that Mei Lin was academically stronger, my mother says with the matter-of-fact tone she might use to discuss the weather, and the admission hits me like a physical blow because it confirms that every moment of favoritism, every disparaging comparison, every time they claimed that Mei Yun was naturally more gifted was a conscious lie designed to manipulate our family dynamics. But that was exactly the problem, Helen. If Mei Lin succeeded too easily, if she got that scholarship and went to Columbia, Mei Yun would have spent her entire life in her sister's shadow, never learning to work hard, never developing the confidence she needs to thrive in the world. The twisted logic of their reasoning becomes clear as my mother continues to explain their long-term strategy with the pride of someone describing a particularly clever investment plan, and I realize that my academic destruction wasn't a side effect of their favoritism toward Mei Yun, but rather the primary goal, the necessary sacrifice to ensure that their chosen daughter would never have to compete with me on an equal playing field. We had to level the playing field, my mother says, using a phrase that makes my blood run cold because it reveals the calculated nature of their betrayal. Mei-yoon needed that head start, that boost to her confidence, and frankly, Mei-lin is resilient enough to succeed no matter what obstacles she faces. Aunt Helen's response provides even more devastating insight into the family's perception of my role in their grand design. But what about Mei-lin's future? She had such potential, and my mother's laugh is light and dismissive, as if my potential is amusing rather than valuable. Mei-lin will be fine. She's practical, she's hardworking, she'll find her way. But Mei-yoon is our family's crown jewel, our chance to really elevate our social status. Having a daughter at Columbia, married to the right kind of family, that's worth more than having 2 daughters with ordinary success. The conversation reveals the full scope of their financial manipulation, and I learned that the college fund I had been told was limited due to economic circumstances was actually quite substantial. But every dollar had been redirected toward enhancing Mei-yoon's opportunities and lifestyle, rather than supporting my education. They discussed the specific amounts with casual precision: $30,000 for her freshman year expenses beyond tuition, $15,000 for her sorority costs, $25,000 for the study abroad program, and another $40,000 being held in reserve for her graduate school applications and wedding expenses. Meanwhile, I have been literally counting coins to afford community college textbooks. But the most chilling revelation comes when my mother outlines their long-term plan for my life, speaking about my future as if it's already decided and I have no agency in determining my own path. We've been thinking that Mei-lin should focus on the family business once Mei-yoon is established in her career, she tells my aunt, referring to the small import company that my father runs with moderate success. She's detail-oriented, she's responsible, and frankly, someone needs to handle the day-to-day operations while your father and I get older. Mei-yoon will be busy with her husband's political career. Did I mention that her boyfriend's father is running for Congress? So it makes sense for Mei-lin to take on the practical family responsibilities. The plan is breathtakingly presumptuous in its assumption that I would willingly sacrifice my ambitions to serve as the family's unpaid manager while Mei-yoon enjoys the fruits of the opportunities stolen from me, and it reveals the depth of their misunderstanding about who I am and what I want from life. They have decided that my role is to be the dutiful daughter who enables everyone else's success while never achieving recognition for my own contributions, the reliable sister who manages the boring details while Mei-yoon basks in the spotlight of public achievement and social prominence. As I listen to them discuss my predetermined future with the same casual tone they might use to plan a dinner menu, I understand that this betrayal goes far beyond the stolen scholarship or the redirected college fund. It represents a fundamental denial of my humanity, my right to choose my own path, my worthiness of the same investment and support they have lavished on my sister. They have decided that my intelligence, my work ethic, my dreams are valuable only insofar as they can be harnessed to serve Mei-yoon's advancement, and they seem genuinely puzzled by the idea that I might want something different for my life. The conversation concludes with my mother's satisfaction about the success of their strategy. Honestly, Helen, it's worked out perfectly. Mei-yoon is thriving at Columbia. She's confident and happy, and she'll graduate with all the connections she needs for a brilliant future. And Mei-lin is learning valuable life skills about resilience and hard work. Sometimes the best gift you can give your children is the challenge that helps them discover their true strength. The self-serving rationalization makes me want to scream, because they have framed my destruction as a gift, my suffering as character development, my sacrificed dreams as a learning opportunity designed for my own benefit. 7 years after graduation, I stand behind the counter of Chen's family restaurant at 2 a.m, my feet aching from a double shift, my uniform stained with grease and exhaustion, watching the late-night news coverage of my sister's engagement announcement to Senator Richardson's son, and I realize that the girl who once dreamed of changing the world through law and policy has been reduced to serving lukewarm coffee to drunk college students who tip in quarters and treat me like I'm invisible. The irony isn't lost on me that I'm working at David's family restaurant. The boy who once believed in my potential now running a successful engineering firm while I clean tables and pretend that this is a temporary situation rather than the permanent reality of my constrained life. Mei-yoon graduated from Columbia with a 2.3 GPA, failing several courses and requiring summer school to meet the minimum requirements for her international relations degree. But none of her academic struggles prevented her from landing a position at a prestigious consulting firm where her father's business connections opened doors that her transcript never could have unlocked. Her LinkedIn profile describes her as a strategic communications specialist, though her actual job responsibilities appear to involve organizing corporate social events and managing the social media presence of executives who treat her like an attractive accessory rather than a serious professional. But the title sounds impressive at cocktail parties, and that's all that matters to my parents, who introduce her as our daughter, the Columbia graduate. While I remain the family member they avoid mentioning in polite conversation. The engagement announcement plays on repeat throughout the evening news cycle, with reporters describing it as a union between two prominent political families. And I watch my sister pose for photographs in a designer dress that costs more than I earn in 3 months, her diamond ring sparkling under camera flashes as she discusses her plans for a spring wedding at the family estate. The groom is handsome in the generic way of men who have never faced real adversity, his smile confident and practiced as he talks about his plans to follow his father into politics. And I can see in their body language that this is more of a strategic alliance than a love match, though neither of them seems bothered by the transactional nature of their relationship. My parents beam with pride in the background of every shot, my mother wearing the pearls she inherited from grandmother and describing the upcoming wedding as the social event of the season, while my father discusses his plans to expand his business through the connections this marriage will provide. The news anchors eat up the narrative of the successful family living the American dream, and there's no mention of the daughter who was sacrificed to make this success possible. No acknowledgement that behind every picture-perfect family story are often hidden costs that someone else has paid. As I wipe down tables and try to calculate whether I can afford both rent and groceries this month, I feel something fundamental break inside my chest. A final snap of the hope that had been keeping me alive through 7 years of diminished expectations and deferred dreams. The exhaustion isn't just physical anymore, it's existential. The bone-deep weariness of someone who has been fighting an unwinnable battle for so long that she's forgotten what victory would even look like. My hands shake as I stack chairs on tables, and when I catch my reflection in the restaurant's window, I see a woman who looks 10 years older than her 25 years, hollow-eyed and defeated in a way that no amount of sleep could fix. The collapse happens gradually, then, all at once, like a building that has been slowly undermining its own foundation until the moment when structural integrity finally fails and everything comes down in a rush of debris and destruction. I'm carrying a tray of dirty dishes when the dizziness starts, the black spots dancing at the edges of my vision as my body finally rebels against months of inadequate nutrition and chronic stress. And I have just enough time to set the tray down before my legs give out and I crumple to the restaurant floor like a discarded piece of paper. The paramedics arrive within minutes, but by then I'm already drifting in and out of consciousness, their voices seeming to come from very far away as they discuss my vitals and check for signs of serious injury. The television above the cash register continues playing the engagement coverage, and through my fading awareness, I can hear the reporter describing Mei Yun's plans for a honeymoon in the Mediterranean, her excitement about starting a family, her gratitude for the opportunities that have shaped her charmed life. The cruel irony of the timing isn't lost on me. Even in my moment of ultimate vulnerability, my sister's triumph dominates the narrative, and I'm just background noise in the story of her success. As I lay on the hospital floor, watching my family celebrate Mei Yun's engagement announcement on the news playing overhead, I realize that I have spent my entire adult life being the stepping stone for someone who never deserved what she had taken from me, and as my vision goes dark, my only regret is that I had been too naive to see the truth until it was too late, too willing to believe that family loyalty was more important than self-preservation, too ready to sacrifice my own happiness for people who would never make the same sacrifice for me. The last thing I remember is the sound of my sister's laughter drifting from the television speakers, bright and careless and completely unaware that across town, the person whose dreams had funded her success was dying alone on a restaurant floor, surrounded by strangers who knew nothing about the brilliant girl she had once been or the woman she might have become if her own family had loved her enough to let her shine. Then I open my eyes and I'm 17 again, sitting in my childhood bedroom with my acceptance letter to Columbia University in my hands, and I know exactly what I have to do this time. I wake up on March 15th, senior year, exactly 3 months before graduation, And the first thing I notice is that my hands are smooth and unmarked by the burns and cuts that had accumulated from years of restaurant work. My reflection in the bedroom mirror showing the face of a girl who still believes that hard work and merit will be rewarded, who hasn't yet learned that her own family will be the architects of her destruction. The Columbia acceptance letter sits on my desk exactly where I remember leaving it, but this time I read it with the bitter knowledge of what my parents and sister are planning, how they will use my achievements as raw material for Mei Yun's fraudulent application, how they will convince me that my dreams are selfish while theirs are noble. The memories of my previous life flood back with perfect clarity. Every moment of betrayal, every year of struggle, every night I fell asleep hungry while my sister posted photos of expensive meals, and I realized that whatever cosmic force has granted me this second chance has also given me the most powerful weapon imaginable. Complete knowledge of my enemy's strategy, combined with the element of surprise. They are expecting the naive, trusting girl who will fight back predictably when she discovers their theft, who will appeal to their sense of fairness and family loyalty, who will exhaust herself trying to prove that she deserves what they're planning to steal. They are not expecting the woman who has learned that sometimes the only way to win an unfair game is to change the rules entirely. My behavior must be completely different this time, and the challenge is maintaining the appearance of my 17-year-old self while operating with the strategic mind of someone who has lived through the consequences of trusting the wrong people. When my mother calls me for breakfast, I respond with enthusiasm instead of the irritation I remember feeling at her interruptions to my study time. And when Mei Yun complains about the difficulty of her college applications, I offer to help instead of pointing out that she should have started earlier if she wanted better results. The reversal of my previous responses clearly confuses them, but they're too focused on their own agenda to question why I'm suddenly so agreeable. David notices the change immediately when I see him at school, his dark eyes studying my face with the intensity of someone trying to solve a puzzle he doesn't understand. "You seem different somehow," he says as we walk to lunch together, and I realize that my calm confidence must be starkly different from the stress and anxiety I was feeling at this point in my previous timeline. More centered, I guess. Like you've figured something out that was bothering you. His observation is accurate in ways he couldn't possibly imagine, and I wonder how much I can tell him without sounding insane or destroying the careful strategy I'm already beginning to formulate. "I've just been thinking about priorities," I tell him, which is true enough without revealing the supernatural circumstances of my new perspective. About what really matters and what's worth fighting for. The conversation feels loaded with meanings he can't access, but David has always been perceptive enough to read between the lines, and I can see him filing away this interaction for future reference. Our friendship has always been built on mutual understanding and shared values, and I know that when the time comes, he will be my most reliable ally in the battles ahead. The strategic decision I'm facing requires perfect timing and flawless execution, because this time I understand that my family's betrayal isn't a spontaneous act of favoritism, but a carefully planned campaign with multiple contingencies and backup strategies. Simply preventing the scholarship theft won't be enough. I need to ensure that Mei Yun faces consequences for her fraud, while simultaneously building alternative pathways to success that don't depend on my family's support or approval. The scholarship they're planning to steal represents just one opportunity, and my previous life taught me that there are always multiple routes to the same destination if you're creative enough to find them. The key insight from my previous life is that I spent too much energy fighting the symptom rather than addressing the disease, trying to prove my worth to people who had already decided that my value lay in serving Mei Yun's success rather than achieving my own. This time, I won't waste effort trying to change their minds or earn their respect. Instead, I'll use their predictable behavior as a tool to achieve my own goals while appearing to comply with their expectations. They want me to be the sacrificial daughter who steps aside for her sister's advancement? Perfect. I'll give them exactly what they think they want, and let them discover too late that they've underestimated both my intelligence and my capacity for strategic thinking. The beautiful irony of my situation is that they've spent so much effort convincing me that I'm the disposable child that they've never bothered to consider what might happen if I stopped seeking their approval and started pursuing my own agenda. My mother's casual certainty that I will accept whatever role they assign me, my father's assumption that I will eventually take over the family business as a consolation prize, Mei Yun's thoughtless expectation that I will always be available to help her with tasks she finds too difficult, All of these assumptions represent blind spots in their strategy that I can exploit. When I walk into dinner that evening, my parents are discussing the scholarship timeline with Mei Yun, and I listen to their conversation with the detached interest of an anthropologist studying a foreign culture. My mother mentions that the application deadline is tomorrow, and Mei Yun expresses concern about whether her essay is strong enough to compete with other candidates. The setup is exactly as I remember it, but this time, instead of feeling anxious about my own application, I'm calculating how to use their expectations against them. I've been thinking, I say casually, cutting into my mother's reassurance about Mei Yun's qualifications, maybe it would be better if I didn't apply for the scholarship after all. The silence that follows is immediate and complete, as if I've just announced plans to join a cult or move to Mars, and I can see them trying to process this unexpected development in their carefully laid plans. My mother recovers first, her voice carefully neutral as she asks why I would make such a decision when I've worked so hard to prepare for this opportunity. It just seems like it would create unnecessary competition between sisters. I explain, borrowing the language of family harmony that I know will resonate with their stated values. And, honestly, Mei Yun probably has a better chance anyway, with her leadership experience and social connections. The lies come easily because I understand now that truth is a luxury I can't afford with people who have already decided to deceive me, and I watch their faces carefully to gauge their reactions to this unexpected cooperation. Mei Yun's relief is obvious and immediate, though she tries to hide it behind a show of sisterly concern about my decision. Are you sure, Mei Lin? I mean, you've worked so hard, and you really deserve this opportunity. The performance is almost convincing. And I wonder if she actually believes her own protests, or if she's simply going through the motions of appearing generous while secretly celebrating that I'm removing myself as competition. Either way, her response tells me that she's fully complicit in whatever plan my parents have devised, and any sympathy I might have felt for her as a fellow victim of their manipulation evaporates completely. The public withdrawal of my scholarship application becomes a masterpiece of calculated performance, and I deliver the announcement during our senior class assembly with the kind of gracious sacrifice that will be remembered and discussed long after the actual scholarship recipient has been forgotten. Standing at the podium in front of 400 students and faculty, I explained that after careful consideration, I have decided to withdraw my application for the National Merit Scholarship because I believe my sister Mei Yun deserves this opportunity more than I do. And the auditorium erupts in surprised murmurs as people try to process why the valedictorian would voluntarily remove herself from competition. Family is more important than individual achievement. I say, borrowing a phrase from my mother's favorite lecture about sisterly loyalty, and I can see her beaming with pride in the audience, finally witnessing the daughter she always wanted me to be, selfless, supportive, willing to put Mei Yun's success ahead of my own ambitions. My sister has demonstrated exceptional leadership and community involvement, and I know she will represent our school and our family with distinction at whatever university she chooses to attend. The irony is exquisite, because every word I speak is technically true, though the reality behind those words is completely different from what my audience assumes. The reaction from the faculty is immediate and concerned, with several teachers approaching me after the assembly to question whether I'm making this decision under pressure or out of some misguided sense of obligation. Mrs. Peterson, my AP English teacher who wrote one of my recommendation letters, pulls me aside with genuine worry in her eyes. Mei Lin, this doesn't make sense. Your academic record, your test scores, your community service, you're the strongest candidate this school has ever produced for this scholarship. Are you sure no one is influencing this decision? Her concern is touching, and I realize that some of my teachers understand my worth even if my family doesn't, which gives me an idea for the alternative strategy I've been developing. I appreciate your support, Mrs. Peterson, but I've decided to pursue other opportunities that might be a better fit for my long-term goals. I tell her, which is completely true, even though she has no way of knowing what those other opportunities might be. Sometimes the most obvious path isn't the right path, and I'm excited to explore different options for my future. While my family celebrates my public sacrifice and my teachers worry about my inexplicable decision, I'm secretly implementing the real strategy I've been developing since my rebirth, using knowledge from my previous life to identify scholarship and admission opportunities that exist outside the traditional channels my family monitors. The internet has become my greatest ally, allowing me to research programs and deadlines without leaving any trace of my activities, and I'm amazed by how many opportunities are available to students who know where to look and how to present themselves as ideal candidates. My first target is the Schultz Foundation Fellowship, a full-ride program for students interested in technology and social impact that I discovered during my community college years when it was far too late to apply. The application requires a different type of profile than the traditional academic scholarships. They want students who can demonstrate both technical aptitude and a commitment to using technology for social good, and my years of tutoring immigrant children at the community center, combined with my perfect scores in advanced mathematics and computer science, make me an ideal candidate. The beauty of the Schultz Foundation is that it operates completely outside the traditional college admissions timeline, with a deadline in late April and an interview process that extends through the summer, which means I can pursue this opportunity without my family even knowing it exists. The application requires extensive documentation of community service work, technical projects, and a research proposal for how I would use their resources to address social problems, and I spend my nights crafting materials that showcase the depth of my experience and the clarity of my vision for the future. My second strategy involves reaching out to professors at MIT, Stanford, and Harvard, who I remember from my previous life as leaders in educational technology and social justice research, using carefully crafted emails to introduce myself as a high school student interested in their work and asking if they might be willing to discuss potential opportunities for undergraduate research. The professors are surprisingly responsive to a well-written inquiry from a motivated student, and several of them invite me to visit their labs or participate in virtual discussions about their current projects. David becomes my unwitting accomplice in this secret application process, helping me research opportunities and providing transportation to weekend programs and information sessions without understanding the full scope of what I'm planning. "You're being very mysterious about all this college stuff," he observes as he drives me to a Stanford information session for first-generation college students. "Are you sure you're not making a mistake by withdrawing from that scholarship? You've always wanted to go to Columbia." "Plans change," I tell him, which is both true and completely inadequate as an explanation for the dramatic shift in my approach to college planning. I'm starting to think that maybe the most obvious choice isn't always the best choice, and I want to explore some different options before I commit to anything. The conversation feels weighted with all the things I can't tell him about my previous life, my family's betrayal, my knowledge of how this story ends if I follow the same path again. Meanwhile, Mei Yun begins to relax into the role of scholarship frontrunner, and I watch her confidence grow as she realizes that I'm not going to challenge her claim to the opportunity that should rightfully be mine. She starts talking about her plans for Columbia with casual certainty, discussing sorority rush and study abroad programs as if the scholarship decision has already been made, and my parents encourage this assumption by helping her shop for college wardrobes and discussing their plans to attend the scholarship ceremony as proud family members. The transformation in family dynamics is immediate and dramatic, with my parents treating me with a warmth and approval that I haven't experienced since childhood, praising my maturity and selflessness in putting family harmony ahead of personal ambition. "This is the daughter we raised," my mother tells my aunt during one of their phone conversations, not realizing that I'm listening from the next room. Finally, Maylin understands that success isn't just about individual achievement, but about supporting each other and celebrating each other's victories. The irony is almost unbearable, because they're celebrating the very behavior that they've been trying to force from me for years, not understanding that my compliance isn't the result of their successful manipulation, but rather the first step in a much more sophisticated strategy that will ultimately expose the hollowness of their values and the cruelty of their favoritism. They think they've won, but they've actually handed me the perfect cover for the real work I'm doing behind the scenes. Mei Yun's request for help with her senior year coursework provides me with the perfect opportunity to implement the second phase of my strategy, and I approach her offer of assistance with the enthusiasm of someone who genuinely wants to see her sister succeed, though my definition of success is quite different from what she has in mind. She's struggling with advanced placement economics and her research paper for AP Government, both courses that are requirements for competitive college admissions, and her casual assumption that I will simply provide the answers reveals how little she understands about genuine academic achievement. I'm just so overwhelmed with everything. She sighs dramatically, sprawling across my bed while I work on my own assignments, her textbooks untouched beside her as she scrolls through social media on her phone. Senior year is supposed to be fun, but these classes are so boring and complicated, and I don't understand why we need to learn about fiscal policy or constitutional law when I'm going to be studying international relations anyway. Her attitude toward learning as an obstacle to be circumvented rather than an opportunity to grow intellectually tells me everything I need to know about how she'll handle the academic rigor of Columbia University. I provide the help she requests, but with strategic modifications that will serve my long-term goals rather than her immediate needs, carefully crafting study guides and practice materials that are technically correct but designed to reinforce superficial understanding rather than deep comprehension. When she asks me to review her economics problem sets, I explain the concepts in ways that will help her complete the assignments but won't prepare her for the kind of analytical thinking required on standardized tests or college-level coursework. The assistance is genuine enough to maintain her trust, while subtle enough to avoid detection by teachers or parents who might question the sudden improvement in her academic performance. "You're such a good tutor," she tells me after I help her with a particularly challenging assignment on monetary policy, and I smile with what I hope appears to be sisterly pride, while internally calculating how this foundation of shallow understanding will contribute to her eventual academic downfall. "I don't know how you make this stuff seem so easy. You should really consider becoming a teacher or something, since you're so good at explaining things in simple terms." The suggestion that I should aim for a modest career in education while she pursues international relations at an Ivy League university perfectly captures the prosody family dynamic I'm working to subvert. My parents are delighted by this display of sisterly cooperation, and they praise me constantly for my willingness to help Mayun succeed, not realizing that they're inadvertently encouraging me to document every instance of academic assistance that will later serve as evidence of her dependence on external support. I keep careful records of our tutoring sessions, including photos of the work I complete for her and screenshots of our text message conversations, where she asks for answers to assignments rather than explanations of concepts. The scholarship application process provides another opportunity for strategic manipulation, and when Mayun asks for my help reviewing her personal statement, I suggest modifications that will make her essay more appealing to the scholarship committee while simultaneously creating a document that will be easy to challenge if anyone questions its authenticity. The essay describes her volunteer work with underprivileged children, and I help her embellish the details in ways that sound impressive, but include specific claims that can be easily disproven by anyone who cares to investigate. "This part about organizing the literacy program sounds amazing," I tell her as we work on the final draft, "but you might want to add more specific details about the implementation and outcomes to really make it stand out." The suggestions I offer will make her application more competitive while also making it more obviously fabricated to anyone who understands the reality of nonprofit work and community programming. The literacy program she claims to have organized never existed beyond a single afternoon of reading to children at the community center, but her essay describes it as a semester-long initiative with measurable outcomes and ongoing impact. David becomes increasingly concerned about my apparent willingness to subordinate my own academic future to Mayun's advancement, and he confronts me directly about the changes he's observing in my behavior and priorities. "This isn't like you, Maylin," he says during one of our walks home from school, his voice carrying the weight of years of friendship and genuine care for my well-being. "You've always been ambitious, always fighting for what you deserve, and now you're just giving up? Handing over opportunities that you've earned to someone who hasn't put in the same effort?" His observations are accurate, but I can't explain that my apparent surrender is actually the opening move in a much more complex game, that I'm using my family's expectations against them in ways they won't understand until it's too late to change course. Maybe I'm just tired of fighting all the time. I tell him, which contains enough truth to be convincing, even though it misses the larger strategic context of my decisions. Maybe family harmony is more important than individual success, and maybe there are other ways to achieve my goals that don't require competing with my sister. The conversation reveals David's growing frustration with what he perceives as my passivity, and I realize that maintaining his friendship and support will require giving him at least partial insight into my actual plans, even if I can't reveal the supernatural circumstances that have shaped my new approach to these challenges. Can you trust me for a few more months? I ask him, meeting his eyes with the kind of direct honesty that has always characterized our relationship. I know this doesn't make sense right now, but I promise I'm not giving up on my future. I'm just taking a different approach to getting what I want. His skepticism is obvious, but our friendship has deep enough roots that he's willing to extend the benefit of the doubt, even when my behavior contradicts everything he thinks he knows about my character and values. Okay, but if you're planning something crazy, I want to be involved, he says with the kind of loyalty that reminds me why he was the one person in my previous life who never lost faith in my potential. Whatever you're thinking, you don't have to do it alone. As spring approaches and the scholarship deadline draws near, I watch my family's excitement build to a crescendo of anticipation and self-congratulation, with my parents treating Mayun's eventual victory as a foregone conclusion, and my role as supportive sister as evidence of my maturity and family loyalty. They have no idea that I'm documenting every conversation, every assumption, every casual admission of their manipulation, building a comprehensive record of their conspiracy that will serve as evidence when the time comes to expose the truth about how the scholarship was really won. The scholarship ceremony proceeds exactly as I remember it from my previous life, with Mayun walking across the stage in the dress I had originally chosen for myself, accepting the National Merit Scholarship with the same speech I had written about overcoming adversity and serving others, and my parents beaming with pride in the front row as they capture this moment of stolen triumph for posterity. The difference this time is that I attend voluntarily, sitting in the back of the auditorium with a small digital recorder in my purse and a carefully rehearsed performance of supportive sister ready to deploy at exactly the right moment. The irony of watching my own achievements celebrated under someone else's name is less painful than I expected, perhaps because I know that this ceremony represents the beginning of Mayun's downfall rather than the culmination of her success, and every word of praise she receives will eventually become evidence of the fraud that made this moment possible. The scholarship committee chairman reads from the application materials I spent 3 years perfecting, describing volunteer work I completed, academic achievements I earned, and leadership qualities I developed, while Mayun accepts the accolades with the gracious smile of someone who has convinced herself that she deserves recognition for accomplishments she never achieved. Mayun Zhang has demonstrated exceptional commitment to academic excellence and community service, the chairman announces, particularly her innovative work with literacy programs for underprivileged children and her leadership in organizing educational initiatives that have had lasting impact on her community. Every claim in that introduction is either exaggerated beyond recognition or completely fabricated, and I make careful notes of the specific false statements that will later form the foundation of the fraud investigation I'm already planning to initiate. The local news coverage follows the same script I remember from my previous life, with reporters treating this as a heartwarming story about sisterly sacrifice and family values, interviewing my parents about their pride in both daughters and my decision to step aside for Mayun's advancement. My mother performs beautifully for the cameras, describing me as mature beyond her years and praising my understanding that sometimes the greatest gift we can give is our support for others' success, while my father discusses the family's commitment to education and the values they've tried to instill in both daughters. When the reporter asks to interview me directly, I deliver the performance I've been practicing for weeks, speaking with genuine emotion about my admiration for my sister's accomplishments and my excitement about her future at Columbia University. Mayun has always been an inspiration to me, I say, looking directly into the camera with the kind of sincerity that can only come from knowing exactly how this story will end. Her dedication to helping others and her passion for making a difference in the world make her the perfect recipient for this scholarship, and I couldn't be prouder to be her sister. The interview will be preserved forever on local news archives, providing a permanent record of my public support for Mayun's candidacy, which will make the eventual revelation of her fraud all the more devastating to the family's reputation and social standing. More importantly, my gracious behavior in this moment will demonstrate that I had no knowledge of any deception and that my withdrawal from competition was motivated by genuine family loyalty rather than any awareness of the conspiracy being perpetrated in my name. But the real action begins during the reception following the ceremony, When Dr. Amanda Foster, the Columbia University admissions officer who serves on the scholarship committee, approaches Mei Yoon for a private conversation about her transition to university life and her plans for using the scholarship to achieve her academic goals. I position myself close enough to overhear their discussion while appearing to be engaged in conversation with other guests, and I watch Mei Yoon's confidence begin to waver as Dr. Foster asks increasingly specific questions about the volunteer work and leadership experiences described in her application. "I'm particularly impressed by your literacy program initiative," Dr. Foster says, consulting her notes as she speaks with the kind of professional interest that makes Mei Yoon visibly nervous. "The outcomes you describe in your application suggest a level of program design and evaluation that's quite sophisticated for a high school student. Could you tell me more about how you develop the assessment metrics and track the participating children's progress over time?" The question requires detailed knowledge of educational programming and evaluation methodology that Mei Yoon doesn't possess, and I watch her scramble for an answer that will sound convincing without revealing her ignorance. "Well, it was really a collaborative effort," Mei Yoon responds, using the vague language of someone trying to avoid specifics, working with the community center staff and the children's teachers to develop appropriate measures of improvement. Her answer is technically coherent but lacks the kind of specific detail that would indicate genuine involvement in program development, and I can see Dr. Foster filing away this information for future reference. The conversation continues for several more minutes, with each question revealing additional gaps in Mei Yoon's knowledge of the work she claims to have accomplished. The seed of doubt I planted earlier by suggesting she adds specific details to her application essay is already beginning to sprout, as Dr. Foster's follow-up questions reveal the impossibility of some of the claims Mei Yoon has made about her volunteer work and its impact. "Your essay mentions that you organized workshops for 30 children over the course of 6 months, but our records show that the community center only served 12 children in that age group during the time period you specify." Dr. NONH Prio Enanor H. Foster observes with the neutral tone of someone pointing out a discrepancy that might have an innocent explanation. Perhaps there's been some confusion about the timeline or the program details. I watch Mei Yoon's face flush with embarrassment as she realizes that her fabricated details are being challenged by someone with access to actual records and the expertise to evaluate her claims critically. "There might have been some overlap with other programs," she stammers, "or maybe I miscounted the total number of participants across different activities." Her attempts to explain away the discrepancies only make them more obvious, and I can see Dr. Foster's expression shift from interested engagement to professional skepticism. The conversation concludes with Dr. Foster's polite but pointed suggestion that Mei Yoon might want to review her application materials to ensure that all information is accurate and verifiable, since Columbia University takes academic integrity very seriously and any discrepancies could affect her admission status and scholarship eligibility. "We'll be conducting standard verification procedures over the summer," she explains with the kind of bureaucratic precision that makes Mei Yoon's nervousness spike to visible levels. "Just routine confirmation of the experiences and achievements listed in scholarship applications." As Dr. Foster walks away, I approach Mei Yoon with an expression of sisterly concern about her obviously distressed state, and she confides her worry that the admissions officer seems suspicious of her application details. "I think she was testing me somehow," Mei Yoon whispers, glancing around to make sure our parents can't overhear this conversation. Asking all those specific questions about dates and numbers, like she was trying to catch me in a lie or something. The irony of her accurate assessment is almost overwhelming, but I maintain my performance of supportive confusion about why anyone would question her qualifications. "I'm sure it's just standard procedure," I reassure her with the kind of confident ignorance that will look particularly damning when the full scope of her deception is revealed. "You've accomplished so much, and your application was so strong. There's no reason for them to doubt anything you've told them. The comfort I provide is genuine in its intent to maintain her false sense of security while secretly anticipating the moment when that security will be completely destroyed by the weight of evidence I've been carefully assembling." The investigation begins exactly 3 weeks after the scholarship ceremony, triggered by an anonymous tip to the scholarship committee that includes carefully documented evidence of the fraud perpetrated in Mei Yoon's application, and the comprehensive nature of the evidence package suggests that someone with intimate knowledge of the deception has decided to expose the truth. The tip includes photographs of my original application materials found in our family's trash, audio recordings of conversations between my parents discussing their plans to substitute applications, and a detailed timeline showing the impossibility of Mei Yun's claimed volunteer work based on community center records and school attendance data. The beauty of the anonymous tip is that it appears to come from an external whistleblower rather than from me, preserving my position as the innocent sister who sacrificed her own opportunities for family harmony while simultaneously ensuring that the evidence is so comprehensive and well documented that the scholarship committee has no choice but to conduct a thorough investigation. The materials I've provided include not only proof of the application fraud, but also documentation of my parents' financial manipulation and their explicit statements about their long-term strategy for managing their daughter's competitive relationship. Dr. Foster contacts our family directly to inform them that the scholarship committee has received allegations of irregularities in Mei Yun's application materials and that they will be conducting a formal review of all documentation, including interviews with the community organizations where she claimed to have volunteered and verification of her academic records with the school district. The phone call comes during dinner, and I watch my parents' expressions shift from confusion to alarm as they begin to understand that their carefully orchestrated deception is unraveling under professional scrutiny. "This is obviously just a misunderstanding," my mother tells Dr. Foster, her voice carrying the forced confidence of someone trying to control a situation that is rapidly spiraling beyond her influence. Mei Yun is an exceptional student with a long record of community service and academic achievement. We have complete documentation of all her activities and accomplishments. But when Dr. Foster requests specific documentation, photographs from events, contact information for supervisors, detailed records of volunteer hours, the gaps in their fabricated narrative become impossible to ignore. Mei Yun panics in exactly the way I expected, her confidence crumbling as she realizes that the lies she's been telling are about to be examined by people with the resources and motivation to verify every claim, and her desperate attempts to contact the community center to arrange retroactive documentation of her volunteer work only serve to create additional evidence of her deception. The center's director politely but firmly informs her that they cannot provide false records of volunteer work that never occurred, and their refusal to participate in her cover-up eliminates any remaining possibility of explaining away the discrepancies in her application. The local news coverage of the developing scandal begins slowly, with reporters initially treating it as a story about the complexity of college admissions and the pressure faced by high-achieving students. But the narrative shifts dramatically when the full scope of the fraud becomes apparent and the media realizes that this case involves not just academic dishonesty, but also deliberate theft of one student's achievements by another. The story gains national attention when education reform advocates point to it as an example of how privileged families manipulate systems that are supposed to reward merit and hard work. My parents' social circle begins to distance itself from our family as the scandal grows, with former friends and business associates suddenly unavailable for the social events and professional collaborations that had formed the foundation of their community standing. The country club membership they had valued so highly becomes a source of embarrassment rather than prestige, as other members whisper about the family that raised a daughter dishonest enough to steal scholarship money from her own sister. The scholarship committee's final decision is announced exactly 6 weeks after the investigation began, with Mei Yun's scholarship officially revoked and her admission to Columbia University rescinded pending a review of her entire academic record, and the public nature of the announcement ensures that the consequences extend far beyond our family to affect Mei Yun's future educational and professional opportunities. The committee's statement emphasizes their commitment to academic integrity and their zero-tolerance policy for fraud, making this case a cautionary tale for other families who might consider similar deceptions. But the most satisfying moment comes when I receive the notification letter from MIT informing me that I have been selected for the Schultz Foundation Fellowship, a full-ride scholarship that not only covers tuition and living expenses, but also provides funding for research projects and international study opportunities that far exceed what the stolen National Merit Scholarship would have offered. The letter arrives on the same day that Mei Yun's scandal makes the front page of our local newspaper, creating a perfect juxtaposition between the consequences of dishonesty and the rewards of genuine achievement. David's reaction to my MIT acceptance reveals his growing understanding of the strategy I've been implementing throughout the spring, and his admiration for my long-term planning is tempered by concern about the devastating impact on my family relationships. "You knew this would happen, didn't you?" he asks as we sit in his car reading the scholarship letter together. "You knew they were planning to steal your application? And you let them do it because you had something better lined up." His assessment is accurate, though he still doesn't understand the supernatural circumstances that gave me advance knowledge of their plan. Sometimes the best way to win an unfair game is to let your opponents think they've already won. I tell him, borrowing wisdom from my previous life's hard-earned understanding of strategic thinking and patient planning. They were so focused on taking away the opportunity I was fighting for that they never noticed me building something completely different. The conversation marks a turning point in our relationship, as David begins to see me not just as his brilliant friend, but as someone capable of sophisticated strategic thinking and long-term planning. The final piece of my revenge falls into place when Stanford and Harvard both offer me admission with substantial merit scholarships, giving me multiple options for my undergraduate education and ensuring that I'm not dependent on any single opportunity or institution for my future success. The abundance of choices represents a complete reversal of my previous life's scarcity and limitation, proof that merit and preparation eventually triumph over manipulation and theft, even when the competition seems hopelessly rigged against honest effort. 5 years later, I stand in my MIT laboratory wearing a custom-designed graduation gown, preparing to defend my doctoral dissertation on educational technology and social equity, while simultaneously managing the day-to-day operations of the tech startup I founded as a sophomore. And the girl who once believed that her family's approval was necessary for her happiness has evolved into a woman who defines success entirely on her own terms. The company I created, EduVerify, develops blockchain-based systems for verifying academic credentials and preventing the kind of fraud that destroyed my sister's life. And the irony of building my career on solving the exact problem that once devastated my own family is not lost on anyone who knows our history. My relationship with David has deepened and matured over the years we've spent building our careers in Boston, with his engineering expertise complementing my technology and policy background in ways that make us natural collaborators both professionally and personally, and our friendship has evolved into the kind of partnership where mutual respect and shared values create a foundation strong enough to support both individual ambition and collective dreams. He founded his own firm specializing in sustainable infrastructure design, and we often joke that we're the couple most likely to solve the world's problems through spreadsheets and prototype development. The proposal happens at my MIT graduation ceremony in front of the assembled faculty and families who have gathered to celebrate our achievements, and David's choice to make this moment public reflects his understanding that I've always valued recognition for genuine accomplishment over private gestures that no one else witnesses. "I've loved you since we were 17, he says, his voice carrying easily across the silent auditorium as he drops to one knee beside the podium where I've just finished my dissertation defense. "Through every timeline, every challenge, every moment when you showed me that intelligence and integrity are the most attractive qualities anyone can possess." His reference to every timeline makes me wonder how much he's intuited about the supernatural circumstances of my rebirth. But the question becomes irrelevant as I look into his eyes and see the same loyalty and faith that sustained me through the darkest period of my previous life. The unwavering belief in my potential that never faltered even when I stopped believing in myself. This time I choose love that doesn't require me to diminish myself. I tell him, borrowing language from my private thoughts during those months when I was planning my revenge against my family's betrayal, and his smile tells me that he understands the deeper meaning behind my acceptance. The wedding takes place the following spring in a small ceremony at the Boston Public Garden, with our guest list carefully curated to include only people who have supported our individual growth and our relationship, and the absence of my parents and sister from the celebration serves as a quiet testament to the boundaries I've learned to maintain between healthy relationships and toxic family dynamics. David's parents, who have always treated me like a daughter, walk me down the aisle, and Dr. Martinez from my community college days gives a reading about perseverance and the triumph of merit over circumstance. My professional success has exceeded every dream I harbored during those desperate years of working multiple jobs to afford textbooks, and the recognition I've received as a 30 under 30 entrepreneur feels particularly meaningful because it represents achievement that no one can steal, distort, or claim as their own. The scholarship program I've established for community college students who want to transfer to elite universities has already helped 47 students achieve educational opportunities they thought were beyond their reach, and every success story reminds me that sometimes the greatest victory is using your own triumph to open doors for others who face similar obstacles. The technology we've developed at EduVerify is being adopted by universities and scholarship organizations across the country, creating systemic safeguards against the kind of fraud that once destroyed my family's reputation and my sister's future. And I find deep satisfaction in knowing that my personal experience of betrayal has been transformed into a tool for protecting other students from similar deceptions. The blockchain verification system makes it virtually impossible to falsify volunteer work, academic achievements, or leadership experiences, ensuring that merit-based opportunities actually go to students who have earned them through genuine effort and accomplishment. David and I are building a life together that reflects our shared values of integrity, hard work, and mutual support. With a home in Cambridge that serves as both our personal sanctuary and our informal headquarters for the various projects and initiatives we develop together, our relationship is characterized by the kind of equality and respect that I never witnessed in my parents' marriage, where my mother's intelligence was subordinated to my father's ego, and family decisions were made based on hierarchy rather than partnership. The house we've purchased together features a home office where we can work on collaborative projects, a garden where David grows vegetables with the same methodical precision he applies to engineering problems, and a library where we collect books about education policy, sustainable technology, and social entrepreneurship, surrounding ourselves with the intellectual resources that fuel our ongoing development as professionals and as partners. Every element of our domestic life reflects choices we've made together based on shared priorities, rather than external expectations or family pressure. When we discuss our plans for starting a family, the conversation includes detailed consideration of how we'll raise children who understand both privilege and responsibility, who appreciate the opportunities they'll inherit while developing empathy for those who face greater challenges, and who understand that true success comes from contributing to something larger than individual achievement. Our children will grow up knowing that their parents met as teenagers, supported each other through educational and professional challenges, and built a life together based on mutual respect and shared commitment to making the world more equitable and just. The consulting work I do with educational nonprofits provides additional income while allowing me to stay connected to the policy issues that initially motivated my interest in law and social change, and the combination of entrepreneurship and advocacy work creates the kind of varied, intellectually stimulating career that I dreamed about during those long nights studying in the community college library. Every project I take on reflects my commitment to using technology and education as tools for social mobility and economic justice. Mei Yun's trajectory over the past 5 years reads like a cautionary tale about the long-term consequences of building a life on fraudulent foundations, and her multiple failures to complete even basic academic programs demonstrate that stolen achievements cannot substitute for genuine capability and work ethic when faced with real challenges that require actual knowledge and skills. After her dismissal from Columbia and the revocation of her scholarship, she enrolled in our local community college with plans to transfer to a 4-year university, but her academic performance consistently fell short of transfer requirements despite the additional support and resources my parents provided. Her first attempt at community college ended after 3 semesters, when she was placed on academic probation for failing to maintain the minimum GPA required for continued enrollment, and her professors reported that she seemed unable to grasp basic concepts in mathematics, writing, and critical thinking that most students master during their freshman year of high school. The study habits and learning strategies that she never developed during her privileged adolescence left her unprepared for the intellectual rigor required even at the community college level, where professors expect students to complete assignments independently and demonstrate genuine understanding of course material. The social consequences of her fraud scandal have proven even more devastating than the academic failures, with her reputation in our hometown permanently damaged by the extensive media coverage of the scholarship investigation and the public revelation of her family's manipulation of the application process. Former friends from high school avoid her at local gatherings, unwilling to associate with someone whose success was built on theft and deception, and her attempts to rebuild her social network have been unsuccessful because people question whether they can trust anything she tells them about her background or accomplishments. Her current employment at a retail clothing store represents a dramatic decline from the prestigious consulting career she once imagined, and her supervisor reports that she struggles with basic customer service skills and frequently calls in sick when her shifts conflict with social activities she considers more important than work responsibilities. The entitlement and lack of work ethic that her privileged upbringing fostered have made it difficult for her to adapt to the reality of hourly employment, where performance is measured by actual contribution rather than family connections or fabricated achievements. The series of failed relationships that have characterized her 20s reflects the fundamental disconnect between the image she tries to project and the reality of her character and capabilities, with several boyfriends ending their relationships when they discovered the extent of her academic fraud and the ongoing financial support she requires from our parents to maintain even a modest lifestyle. The men she's attracted to are typically ambitious and successful in their own right, but they lose interest when they realize that her apparent sophistication and intelligence are largely performative rather than genuine. My parents' social standing in the community has never recovered from the scandal, with their membership in the country club revoked and their participation in local business and charitable organizations significantly reduced due to the reputation damage caused by their role in orchestrating the scholarship fraud. My mother's volunteer work with educational foundations became untenable once her involvement in academic deception became public knowledge, and my father's business relationships suffered as clients questioned whether they could trust someone who had actively participated in stealing opportunities from his own daughter. The financial cost of supporting Mei Yun's repeated attempts at education and career development has been substantial, with my parents spending tens of thousands of dollars on tutoring, test preparation, application fees, and living expenses, without any return on their investment in her potential for success. The money they once planned to use for their retirement has been diverted to cover her ongoing expenses, and their resentment about her failures has begun to strain their marriage as they blame each other for the parenting decisions that created her entitled and dependent personality. The inheritance settlement following my grandmother's death provided a final measure of justice, as her will specifically designated all educational and business assets to the granddaughter who demonstrated genuine academic achievement and moral integrity, effectively disinheriting Mei Yun due to her fraudulent behavior and awarding me the resources that will support my continued research and entrepreneurship. The legal language of the will makes it clear that grandmother understood the truth about our family dynamics even before the scandal became public, and her decision to reward actual merit over manipulated success provided posthumous validation of the values she tried to instill in both of her granddaughters. The final encounter between Mei Yun and me occurs at a coffee shop near our parents' house, where she approaches me after seeing my engagement announcement in the newspaper and attempts to initiate a reconciliation based on our shared family history and blood relationship. "We're still sisters," she says with the desperate hopefulness of someone trying to reconstruct a bridge that was permanently burned by her own choices. "And family should support each other no matter what mistakes we've made in the past." Her language reveals her continued inability to take full responsibility for the deliberate fraud she committed, characterizing theft and deception as simple mistakes that can be overlooked in favor of family harmony. "Yes, we are still sisters," I respond with the calm certainty of someone who has built a life so complete and satisfying that past injuries have lost their power to cause pain. And this time I chose to be the sister who succeeds through genuine effort rather than stolen opportunity. The conversation is brief and final, with no dramatic confrontation or emotional outburst, just the quiet acknowledgement of the choices we've both made and the consequences we've both accepted as the natural result of our different approaches to life and relationships. As I walk back to my car after declining her invitation to rebuild our relationship, I reflect on the strange journey that brought me from the devastation of my previous life to the abundance and satisfaction of my current circumstances. and I realized that the greatest revenge was never destroying Mei Yun's opportunities, but rather building my own life so completely that her betrayal became irrelevant to my happiness and success. The girl who once died alone on a restaurant floor, broken by family betrayal and economic desperation, has been replaced by a woman who defines her worth through her own achievements and finds her meaning in relationships based on mutual respect and genuine affection. Standing in my own home that evening, wearing my engagement ring and looking at my PhD diploma on the wall, surrounded by the evidence of a life built through integrity and hard work, I understand that sometimes the greatest victory is simply refusing to let other people's choices define your destiny, and as David wraps his arms around me, I know that the most profound revenge is living so well that your enemy's actions become footnotes in the story of your triumph rather than the defining chapters of your tragedy.